We'll begin the Planning Committee meeting of Akron City Council. I'd like to ask our clerk for a roll call. Hi, here.
Kamer. Aye. Connor. Aye. Baylor.
Aye.
Mosley.
Aye.
All committee members are present.
Thank you. We have an item that's up for a public hearing today. The process for that will be that we will first read in the proposal before the Planning Committee. After that, we will receive a report from the Planning Department. After we receive that report from the Planning Department, we will then ask anyone, be it online or in the room here, if they would like to testify before the committee, to please be sworn in by our Clerk of Council, Sarah Viviano. After that, we'll open up the public hearing process, and we'll ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak in favor or anyone wishing to speak against the proposal. After that, we'll close the public hearing. We'll open it up to questions from the committee, and then we'll open up the questions to all of council. The committee will not make a recommendation this afternoon. This evening, though, what will happen is we'll repeat that process. And we will then, after the public hearing, we will then make a recommendation to all of City Council, either in favor, against, or to table an item and take time. So those are the procedures that we'll be utilizing today per council rules. And so the first item, I'd like to ask our clerk to please read in. Thank you.
Sure. Could I request that the committee approve the minutes of the previous meeting before we move into that?
Thank you for reminding me. Is there a motion?
So move.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you. The ayes have it.
The item up for public hearing today is an ordinance authorizing a certificate of appropriateness to demolish the Beacon Journal building at 44 East Exchange Street and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. Mr. Antonucci, I believe, is online, will provide us a report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. The owner of the former Beacon Journal building, Michael Moran, is repealing the decision of the Urban Design and Historic Preservation Commission on May 2nd to deny his request for a certificate of appropriateness to demolish the building. The building was listed as an Akron historic landmark for the owner's request in March 2021. Public hearings were held by Urban Design of the Historic Preservation Commission on October 18th and again on February 7th to hear the owner's request for a certificate of appropriateness to demolish the building. At each meeting, 90 days time was granted and approved to allow the owner additional time to mark up the building for purchase. Urban Design and Historic Preservation Commission finally voted to deny the request on May 2nd. If demolished, the use of the property would be a surface parking lot. The owner would work to retain the tower portion of the building. The reason for the demolition is that the owner has not found a tenant for the building after spending considerable capital. There's no indication in the submitted documents that the building was deteriorated. The city's historic preservation ordinance states that the Urban Design and Historic Preservation Commission shall approve a certificate of appropriateness for demolition when A, the historic landmark is so deteriorated that its integrity has been irretrievably lost, and the structure is a secondary one that lacks historic or architectural significance or does not occupy a major portion of the historic landmark, and C, retention of the historic landmark is not technically or economically feasible, and D, the commission, after thorough investigation, determines that there is no feasible alternative to demolition. The planning staff and Urban Design and Historic Preservation Commission do not feel that the applicant has produced compelling evidence that all of these conditions have been met and recommends denial of the certificate of appropriateness. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Antonucci. At this time, we'll ask if there's anyone here or online that wishes to testify before the committee to please be sworn in by our clerk, Sarah Biviano.
If you'd like to speak at today's public hearing, could you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give will be the truth? If so, please say, I do.
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll now open up the public hearing process and ask if there is anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the proposal and appropriateness to demolish the Beacon Journal building at 44 East Exchange Street. If you could please provide for us your name and address.
Justin Gantz, 6677 Frank Avenue Northwest, North Canton, Ohio.
Elizabeth Corbin Murphy, 968 West Market Street, Akron.
Thank you.
We are here today to speak on behalf of the owner, and I would like to read the information that was sent to council. President Somerville, council members, and Council Committee for Planning and Economic Development. This group is before council to request a reversal of the decision made by Urban Design and Historic Preservation Commission. Because of the way the city's ordinance is written, the UDHP had no choice but to deny the request. The ordinance, while appearing to have exceptions allowing demolition, is written requiring that all exceptions are met in order to be granted, an impossible task. If the team wished to restore the building and in the process remove only the newest addition, the commission would still have been required to deny the request and force an appeal. On behalf of the owners of the Akron Beacon Journal, ABJ, this appeal for the demolition of the ABJ is presented to you. There are 4 criteria under which demolition may take place: loss of landmark status, loss of structural integrity, deteriorated condition, and lack of economic viability. The owners of the ABJ are prepared to discuss the lack of economic viability. However, the city's legal counsel has stated that the ordinance requires all 4 criteria. In reviewing this situation, the local landmark is required to have structural integrity before it is listed in the city's register, and the owner of a local landmark is required to maintain the building. So if the owners are fulfilling their responsibility to maintain the building, the criterion could never be met, creating an impossible situation. In response to the economic viability, the owners first applied to the UDHP in November of '22. The team agreed to take time on the issue to see if they could generate any more interest in the project from new developers or from any others with whom this project already had been discussed. 90 days was set as the goal. Returning in February, the team again agreed to take time to allow others to step forward with solutions. Each of these 90-day time periods was offered by the team to mimic other cities' required ordinance responses to a request for demolition, to show good faith, and to seriously search for a viable solution. Please understand the urgency with which this work was conducted. The team understands that the tax credits offered by the Ohio Department of Development have an expiration date. These tax credits are a big incentive for a developer. If the tax credits expire, the incentives to develop this property expire as well. The team was pleased to see good attendance at the UDHP meetings. As the team anticipated, there were some good ideas suggested. The team continues to follow through with some of these ideas in an attempt to save the building. The team does not want this building to go down. However, there is an active offer on the table for the property that does not include the building. Unless the team can make one of those ideas financially viable within the time frame expected by the ODOD, that offer will be the only one on the table. The team thanks you for your time in reviewing appeal to the UDHP decision. The team also understands that the City Council must address these types of situations in their own land holdings. The Firestone Building Number 1 presents many of the same difficulties as the ABJ. Perhaps we can solve these issues together.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then I just wanted to go over, was the packet I sent over distributed to everyone? The packet of information I sent, was that distributed to all members?
Yes, what you sent on Friday
Yeah.
afternoon, yes, that was
Okay.
distributed to all members.
I'm not going to go through all of that in detail, but again, our point here was just trying to demonstrate the economic hardship or lack of economic viability. So, we kind of go through here and lay this all out with the different iterations the owner went through, starting with the different concept test fits, multiple options for multifamily development, hotel, parking, all of that was explored. We showed our historic preservation process in here. And then again, the different iterations between residential. We had a local logistics company and their due diligence submitted through this. Testing company, their due diligence, and finally the Akron Police Station and their due diligence. Again, all of this resulting in no tenant for the building. So just wanted to kind of reiterate. Again, I think we were fully able to demonstrate the lack of economic viability here, but per Elizabeth's comments, the word "and" connecting all those conditions in the ordinance leaves us where we are today.
Thank you.
And I just would like to emphasize that we have not given up trying to save the building. We are still in discussions with a couple of new developers, but there are timelines on those, and they also have to meet certain Department of Development criteria, and if we can meet that, even if we take out the demolition permit, we will only be demolishing interior work and not the entire building, if we can make that work.
Thank you. Thank you both. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of authorizing the certificate of appropriateness? Excuse me. Anyone else? Very good. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this? Please, if you could please step up and provide for us your name and address. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jody Grassgreen, 699 Weber Avenue. First, I'd like to thank each of you who ran this year in the recent elections to serve the citizens of Akron. No matter what the outcome was, neither running nor serving is easy. So please uphold the Urban Design and Historic Preservation Commission denial to demolish the ABJ building. Alternative uses like a home to STEM schools need to be investigated. And as long as I have your attention, let's consider the historic preservation of the remains of the Rubber Bowl, where Jim Brown got his NFL start and the Heisman Lodge resides.
Thank you. If we could please stick to the legislation itself.
Here I come. I'm going to.
Pursuant to city council rules.
Here it comes.
Okay.
Full circle, Jeff.
Thank you.
Let's think smartly about our heritage while creatively growing our future. But I do have ideas for the Rubber Bowl if you want. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
My name is Deborah Marks. I live at 1252 Heather Lane in Akron. 2 years ago, I returned to Akron to live. I had lived in California in the Bay Area before, but I was born in Akron. In the years after I had left, I always enjoyed returning to Akron to visit my mother, my grandparents, and such, but also to see the city. I felt comfortable here. There were places I recognized that were still standing, for example, Mary Coyle's, Tangier's, Stan Hewitt, the mansions along Market Street, and many more. It was all familiar, and one felt at home again. I've seen in California what it means to not value the past and just tear down old buildings to put up the new. A building just 50 years old was always considered obsolete and would be replaced, but it was replaced mostly with a building of lesser quality. We usually don't build today like we did in the past. The City Hall in California, built in mid-century style where I lived, was set back on a beautifully landscaped hill, but it was torn down to be replaced by a huge, black, ugly building right up to the sidewalk. The Akron Beacon Journal building is a landmark in Akron. It has history and the style is unique. Renovation and repurposing would serve the city and the people well. The costs are usually less, about 2/3 the cost of new construction. Living spaces could be a new purpose of this building. I'm kind of new to this, so I didn't know what had gone on before. I was recently in the former Tangiers. LeBron and his architects have done a wonderful job in repurposing this building. I would say leave the Akron Beacon-Journal on past it represents intact. It stands for a time in Akron that was remarkable. I always tell my friends in California that Akron was a Silicon Valley 100 years ago. Don't make the mistake they are making in California by destroying the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, fellow members of the committee, my name is Aaron Uhl. I'm a student at the University of Akron, but I'm actually a resident of Wadsworth, Ohio. I just love Akron that much. I come before you today to deny this appeal here, just to go over the history of the Akron Beacon-Journal building. It's been there at 44 East Exchange, raised by the Akron Times-Press in 1929, when John S. Knight bought the Beacon from his father, took over. They moved in 1938. From that location, there's 4 Pulitzer Prizes, of which they won at that building. And so it carries a lot of local history, of journalistic prowess, and a whole bunch of history of the city itself. But beyond that, it's also a beautiful Art Deco structure, one of 4 remaining in the city of Akron. We still have the YMCA building, the Polsky Department Store building, and First National Tower. I know that Akron, being a Midwestern town, might think of us just being industrial, but really the history of Akron is told through its art and architecture as well. And you can see that where Akron had some of its largest growth in the late 20s into the early 1930s. Beyond this, I really want to make the case that this building has the opportunity cost so much greater than just a parking lot. A parking lot for just surface, not for the public either, which, let's face it, we have an abundance of parking as it is downtown, but if we put that aside, this is just for the building owner's parking for his building. That doesn't offer anything to the citizens of Akron. That offers for the residents of that one building. So we're going to tear down the entire building for that parking lot for this owner's own building. It's not going to benefit the city. Beyond that, the building has an environmental risk if demolished. That building, no doubt, has some concern issues for asbestos and lead inside that building, being of its age. But you're going to have to mitigate that anyway if you're going to demolish that building. And if you're going to restore that building, it's going to be a little bit less of a task because you're going to be using it again. We don't know about the airborne risk that you might present for that. Also, it's going to cost the city an enormous amount of money because you're going to have to block off that corner of Exchange, and you have to make sure that the city does it safely in an effective manner. You don't know if the building owner is going to try to come and ask for some support in that, and that's not what the taxpayers of Akron have signed up for, and I don't think that that's fair to them as well. Finally, the building itself is 230,000 square feet. I think that that can be used in many different ways. Downtown Akron can be considered a food desert by many modern standards. I think that what Cleveland does with Heinen's grocery stores and the former Cleveland Trust building would be excellent. I've heard everything from a parking deck to a roller skating rink. The building is massive. We can do a lot with it, and I'm asking you to vote against this. Akron deserves to have its historical dignity, and I hope that you will consider. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else wishing to speak before the committee?
My name's Dana Noel. I live at 601 Weber Avenue. I wrote a letter earlier, I think it was Friday, email letter to everyone on council on behalf of Progress Through Preservation, which is an advocacy group here in town. All 300 members support being against the demolition of the Akron Beacon-Journal building. I'm a lifelong Akron resident. I'm also a contractor. My office is in Cleveland. I haven't done any work in Akron, unfortunately, but I love living here and care very much about our city. My work has specialized in, for the last 20 years, in the adaptive reuse of historic properties. And I can tell you that based on my experience, the Akron Beacon Journal building is in very good condition and a perfect candidate for adaptive reuse. There are lots of tools to make this happen in terms of historic tax credits, state and federal. And I know, I think the city helped in various ways with the Bowery, with not so much giving money, but offering incentives such as guarantees and possibly some grants. A parking lot would easily be the lowest and worst use and a giant step backwards for the redevelopment of our Akron City Center. We need to be thinking in terms of the Bowery project. We need to make a vibrant downtown that's alive and active 24/7. And I think thanks to council and the administration over the last, many, many years, we've made a lot of great strides towards that goal. It would be a shame to tear the Akron Beacon Journal building down for parking purposes. I won't go through the letter that I wrote, but I would like to just briefly summarize several of the points actually, and re-emphasize them. No data has been provided that supports a need for parking, and it's doubtful that we really do need additional parking downtown for the adjacent apartment buildings. Aesthetically, it would be a very bleak space, and it would put a big damper on an active and vibrant urban downtown. No alternative development plans have been suggested besides a parking lot. If they were going to put a 5-story medical complex there with high-paying jobs, then we might have a conversation. But they haven't offered anything that's going to benefit Akron. And I realize this is private ownership, but it's still a community asset, and there needs to be a dialogue and finding a common ground that's going to be purposeful for everybody. Probably the biggest thing would be it undermines our tax base without any replacement. Money is a big issue. There's just not enough of it to go around. And I think it's a very important consideration to make. You can always tear the building down, but I don't really think that we've exhausted all the possibilities that this building could be without tearing it down. Demolition, it would be a regression to 60s urban renewal. And again, in reference to the Bowery District, this should be the model for what things should be, we should be thinking about with what we do with our downtown. The owner claims extraordinary costs, and I'm not an expert on this, and I haven't been shared very many details, and I don't think anybody has had any details on this, but I think most of his expenses are maintenance issues and taxes. And I don't think that he's documented really any capital improvements that he's made to warrant doubling the price that he's asking for the building. He bought it for $1 million. He wants to sell it for $2 million. He wants to sell it, and I understand that it's a separate LLC that his sons own, but still, to me, when I think of this emotionally, it's within the family, and I'm just not sure what his motives are here and what the justification is to double the price without, why not just double the price and not make any excuses about it? Hey, I bought it for $5 a square foot, which is very, very cheap. I want to sell it for $10, which to me would make more reason, rather than trotting out a bunch of, I had a sprinkler line burst and I had all these taxes I've had to pay. He's a sophisticated businessman. He knows what he's doing. He didn't get the low-hanging fruit that he was hoping for, and he just needs to figure out a different way other than tearing down the building. I don't think a serious effort has been made to market the property. This is a regional, if not a national, project that would create interest in national and regional developers. I don't think there's been outreach on that level. I don't think a broker has been retained that reflects that type of market, somebody who knows historic redevelopment. This is a significant product, and I know I work in Cleveland, so I think of Cleveland examples, but in Cleveland I see out-of-state developers coming in and doing projects. Now, Akron is behind the curve relative to Cleveland, sure, but you know, this is a signature building. We don't have to sit here and argue that this is a landmark building. Everybody knows it. Everybody who grew up in Akron, this is a compass point in our lives. And I just think more of an effort should be made. I wouldn't be up here talking or be this motivated to save it if I felt that he exhausted all the possibilities and it was truly a hardship for him, and there was no other alternative. The one thing that bothers me the most is I've reached out to him twice. I've sent him 2 emails. Now, he has publicly, in the New Akron Beacon Journal, in a couple of articles, he's reached out. He said, he gave his phone number, he gave his email, he was soliciting ideas for either the sale of the property or the repurposing of the property. And I sent him an email, and I never got a response. And my email was a suggestion that he turn it into a parking deck, solve his parking issues, whatever they are, and also save the building for potential future redevelopment that would be a higher purpose. And that could easily be done. I've done it on 2 of my projects in Cleveland. And I know of other projects in Cleveland where it's been done. And it would be done, it could be done for far less money than the cost of demolition. It would be a fraction of the cost. So I never got a response. I mean, and here he is, he's asking for, public input. And, even if the response was, that's a bad idea, I don't want to consider it, that would have at least been a response. But a non-response is, I can't justify it in this situation. So I hopefully you recognize all these issues and that it requires a lot more discussion. And if nothing else, he needs to spend, 90 days just doesn't accomplish anything. It can take a couple of years to do something, and everybody knows what the effort was to do the Bowery District. I think the same effort should be expended on the Akron Beacon Journal building, and work together to get a great redevelopment initiative. I don't think the city should just give him money. I mean, I think in some ways this is arm twisting on his part to extract money from the city, and I don't think that the city should do that. But the city has a lot of resources and can offer a lot of support in other ways, and who knows what we could end up with. But it may take some time, and every project that I've ever done over the past 20 years, they're like cats. They have 9 lives, there are several iterations, and and I think that's the case here, and I think we really need to try and save this building and find a good economic use for it, reuse for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else here wishing to make comment?
Good afternoon, members of the Planning and Economic Development Committee and other council members. My name is Abigail Drennan, and I live at 81 Mayfield Avenue in Ward 1. I'm here today to speak in opposition to this ordinance that's been proposed to demolish the former Akron Beacon Journal building. I have a bunch of thoughts on this, and they're really tough to narrow down, but I'm going to try and focus on 2 main points this afternoon. So the conversation around demolishing this building brought up to me kind of the importance of walkable towns. And if we demolish this building, we demolish really a huge opportunity for our downtown to be more walkable. Walkable areas in the U.S. account for 1% of the land use, but generate 20% of GDP in our country. Building more walkable urban areas increases tax revenue for cities while easing the affordability crisis. So this giant property at 44 East Exchange is a great place to continue to develop and build on a more walkable downtown. Anyway, if we wanted to pursue more about walkable cities, we can just look to cities like Arlington, Virginia, and Carmel, Indiana, who have initiated these kind of initiatives and are thriving. My second point is around the sustainability of buildings. Essentially, the greenest building is the one that already exists. And existing buildings are a resource for growth. Every city and town in the nation has dozens, hundreds, even thousands of abandoned and partially occupied buildings. And simply occupying every floor of these existing buildings would absorb years of demand for growth and revitalize countless neighborhoods. So just thinking about renewing this existing building is probably one of our smartest growth strategies. I have some other thoughts, but I really just want to summarize in saying that Akron is not unique in needing to look for progressive, alternative, creative solutions to what to do with vacant buildings due to our massive shift from working in office buildings to working at home due to COVID-19. And as a fun fact, New York City alone has 26 Empire State Buildings that could fit in their empty office space. So approving this request for demolition should be the last resort, and I just, like everyone has mentioned here, I just feel like there's something we can do with this building before we demolish it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to make comment? Is there anyone online?
There is not anyone online, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Yes,
Chairman.
Mr. York?
Thank you. I just want to note for the record that Mr. John Wheeler is here. The ordinance requires the presence of a member of the Urban Design Commission. So Mr. Wheeler's here. I don't know if the committee had any questions for him, but I'm sure he'd be happy to address anything.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. York. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to make any comments? Very good. We'll close the public hearing portion, open up to the committee for questions and comments. Mr. Wheeler is here, you say? Yes, Mr. Wheeler. I don't know if this is for you or for maybe Mr. Antonucci or someone here. When was the appeal, I guess, for lack of a better term, applied for at the commission? Because I know there's some extensions from what I understand.
Yeah, we had two 90-day extensions. I believe it was February. I didn't write it down. It was in the introductory.
Mr. Antonucci, do you happen to have that?
It was originally October 18th, then again on February 7th, both 90-day extensions. So then May 2nd was the vote to deny the certificate of appropriateness.
Thank you. Thank you. So October 22nd was the first hearing, if you will?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So the city council, just for a point of information, the city council had approved the historic designation in February of 21, and the appeal apparently was probably prepared before the October 22nd.
Correct.
But officially it was heard by the commission on October 22nd. So that's about 18 months or so, I don't know, without looking at my calendar. But thank you. Thank you, by the way, for all your hard work on the commission. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a couple questions. The integrity of the building, is it deteriorated to where there's really kind of no point of return? Is it?
No, sir.
No, okay.
No, sir. The owner has been taking care of it so that has not happened. There's, small pieces, but nothing significant.
Yeah, good. The structure, and it's there's not a historic or architectural significance of any. I'm pointing toward the second criteria that we're looking at here in terms of the structure. It's secondary one that lacks historic or architectural significance, does not occupy major portion of the historic landmark or its historic district.
So I think everybody here agrees that the building is significant.
Okay, very good, thank you. Yeah, I think we do. And then the next question, I guess, is reference you had mentioned, I believe, in terms of the technically or economically feasible. And I think that's part of what your argument is here. Can you please dive a little bit deeper into that?
I'm sorry, sir?
Can you please dive in a little deeper on that?
Sure. I know that Mr. Noel encouraged us to go out of town, and I think that Justin can tell you about the developers with whom we've spoken.
Okay.
We do have some non-disclosure agreements on the deals that we're trying to put together now.
Yes.
But the past ones, I think he can address.
So the question is the economic
Yes,
viability.
yes, that one of the criteria that you had cited.
I mean, that's what we've really the bulk of this has been trying to demonstrate. I mean, the owner purchased the building in 2020. There was an article in the Beacon Journal the summer of 2020, so we're 3 years into this now. Every incentive has been fully explored. He acquired historic tax credits. Those currently sit with the building now. Obviously, there's tax abatement and TIF available depending on the final use of the building, and then opportunity zone is another component to this that the owner's already taken advantage of to this point. So a full list of incentives have been explored. You know, like we said, we've spent 3 years now touring different tenants and different uses through the building. And that's, you know, we have this 158-page document here showing pro formas and cost estimates and due diligence through all of this. I didn't expect you to read it over the weekend.
It was extensive. I know some of us tried. But another question for you. So it was, the marketing was just kind of locally, or was it regionally, or was it nationally?
The building's set for sale for multiple years before Mr. Moran purchased it. And then since then, you know, we did write several articles with it. The problem with the CoStar listing is, and we actually got the approval from the Urban Planning Commission, Historic Preservation Planning Commission, to not list it openly nationally, because anyone can come in and tie up the building for 120 days and due diligence, and then we can't show it to anyone else. So, you know, currently we do have other developers that are going through the building. We have NDAs, we can't disclose any more than that, but, you know, by not putting it publicly like that, we've been able to vet serious offers or serious interests with the building that have led to, you know, legitimate interest that has been moving forward. But, you know, I think, and unfortunately, all the comments, again, I'm empathetic with all of this. I agree this shouldn't be put down, you know, the building shouldn't be torn down, but the problem that we face is the way that this ordinance is written, our hands are tied. We have lost all flexibility to do anything. The intent is not to tear the entire building down, but we can't even keep a portion of it and remove something that's not significant, like the 1980s building, to provide for more surface parking or do a structured deck. Again, with the way that this ordinance is written, we have no flexibility to do that. Again, time is running out for tax credits.
Was that within the, I have to look at it yet again, the request for a portion or for the whole?
We had never requested a whole building to come down. We even put forth the site plan with the existing clock tower to remain. There's, you know, flexibility here where the 20s building could remain. Maybe the portion of the 50s building goes away, but again, the way the ordinance is written, it's no demolition at this point is what we've been granted.
Okay, very good. Do you have a question? It's committee first.
I do. Can you repeat that, because I'm confused? You want a parking lot because the ordinance was written incorrectly, so you can't save half the building? Is that what you're saying?
No, we're saying we would like, parking is an issue. There was a comment about that, you know, the owner has showed a need for parking next door, and they have a purchase agreement in place for $2 million. What we're trying to say is that the request for demolition, it doesn't specify a portion of it. From my understanding, it's just demolition in general, and that we're not able to take down any of the structure based on the way that this appeal, or that this ruling has been made. So we can't take a portion of the building down, we can't take the whole thing down. We've never intended to take the entire structure down. We have site plans that were submitted showing clock tower to remain, but the majority of the site to stay parking. But I guess my point is that we're not able to even tear off the 80s building or any of that. I mean, it's really kind of an all or nothing the way this is written.
Is there some?
Maybe I'm misunderstanding
clarity
it,
on
but-
that, I'd appreciate that, because that sounds...
Seems to be a question.
My name's Kurt Mulhauser from the Planning Department. I'd say that if you want to come before a commission with whatever the proposal is, like just tear down the new addition, I would recommend bringing that proposal back to commission with, here's the part we want to tear down and here's the part we want to save. Obviously, we'd be flexible to listening to any of that at urban design. What was presented to urban design was generally plan for the total demolition with the possible exception of the tower to remain on the corner just as like a landmark surrounded by the parking lot. Would you say that's accurate? But if, you know, I think we'd be open to tearing off the back of the structure that was like a 1980s edition or 60s or something. It wasn't, and saving the portion along the frontage along Exchange. So if you have an, you know, an option to do that, I'd suggest bringing that back to Urban Design Commission.
So it's our understanding from our discussions, especially in the last Urban Design Historic Preservation Commission meeting, that the commission can't agree to that because we don't meet all the criteria. And the criteria are not individual. So there isn't any leeway.
Well,
that was our understanding. There's no leeway at all.
I believe there's a leeway
there
for
is.
partial demolition as opposed to total demolition. You know, and if you bring that case to us for a partial demolition, that's definitely, I think people would be more open to that than total demolition.
So I think that the proposal that was brought to you was to keep the 1929 corner and
there was a
have green
possibility
space
of
and
that,
open
yes.
space with the parking.
John, do you want to comment?
But as far as we're understanding now, we couldn't get a partial demolition permit or a full demolition permit without meeting
you
all
can
four
get
of those
partial.
criteria. And that's the issue.
You'd have to go through from what I'm hearing is you would have to go through the, and I can't answer for discussions in the past, but you'd have to request that hearing again before the commission in terms of a partial versus a total. And I think that's what, this ordinance speaks to a total. And so that's,
Yeah, if I could go just a
That's-
little bit further, because it seems like it was only just to save the clock tower and nothing else, is what I'm hearing. So if it was
That's
to save
not
more than
acceptable.
just a clock tower, like Chairman Fusco said, I would encourage you to go back through that process, because we're talking about 230,000 square feet here. If you're just saving a clock tower, what other repurposes could you use the building for, other than just what you originally said, a parking lot?
I think that's where we're struggling. With all due respect here, this is beginning to get pretty subjective. I mean, we're going through the four pieces here, and from our understanding, number two, or number one, loss of landmark status, this building will never not be historically significant. It always will be, no matter what. So if we ever want to take down any portion of what's been historically significant, a chunk of the 50s, you know, up to the 20s building, leaving the clock tower, again, our reading of this and where we're at is that'll never be allowed based on how the ordinance was written, because everything is linked by and we had the opinion read by that. Again, we presented what we wanted to do with it originally. There's been other options available, but the owner has asked us to request for the demolition here, and that's where we're at, so.
So your historic tax credits are just to save the tower?
No, they're for the entire building.
Even if you turn it into a parking lot?
No.
No, well, okay, so if you don't mind, I would like to address the tax credits. Right now, there are state and federal tax credits that are tied to the rehab of this building. The federal tax credits are not granted until the project is done. So that's kind of pie in the sky right now.
Right.
But the state tax credits have a timeline, and they have a timeline to do to meet interim requirements. And right now, the interim requirements for the state tax credit are just right on the edge. And most of the developers with whom we have spoken said, we don't get the state tax credits, there's no way anything's going to work in that building because it's just so infeasible. So we've been trying really hard to get developers through there fast enough to also save the tax credits. And it's getting really, really tight.
understandable. Please, John, thank you. I apologize, John.
Susan, could you address whether or not if a new developer came, could he reapply for additional tax or new tax credits because he's a different developer?
Yeah, you want me to answer that?
Sure.
I can, sure. So if somebody else wanted to start over completely, they could make new applications for the state tax credits.
Right, right.
But that's going to set the project back another 3 years. And that's something that the current owner doesn't want to do. So he's been trying to work with other people together in order to make, to put together a capital stack that can be matched by a loan, which is really important, in order to please the Department of Development. They, by statute, they cannot extend their calendar requirements because it's written into the state law. So,
Okay, one more question.
Just one more question. So,
Mr. Chair,
you said
did
you...
not hear the comment made by the chair of the committee. He made a comment a minute ago, I couldn't hear it, didn't speak in the mic.
Yes, certainly. He had asked a question in reference to the, if it could be reapplied.
So if a new developer comes forward, can he reapply for historic tax credits just like this developer has done? And the answer is yes.
Yes, the answer is yes, yes. They can reapply.
So my final question, I'm not sure if you can answer this, or maybe Mr. Moran, you said you have potential developers walking through the building, but you have an NDA, so of course you can't disclose that. Why are we talking about a parking net? If you already have people who may have a potential to do something else, maybe some adaptive reuse of the building.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
okay, so if we lose the tax credits, then the potential for the current project just goes away entirely. And so I think Mr. Moran is tired of going through all of this, and he has an active offer on the table. There is nothing to stop another developer, if they became a partner with Mr. Moran before we lose the tax credits, then that's the ideal situation. If the tax credits go away and the project has to start over again, it's probably take another 3 years, and the developer would have to put their whole capital stack together and start over again. And frankly, this building was up for sale for, I think, 4 years before Mr. Moran bought it. And we don't see that there is a lot of demand for that very large empty building. And he is concerned that he cannot sell it. And since he has an active offer, it's kind of tempting to take the active offer.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you, thank you, Nancy Holland. Any committee members not seeing any? Nancy Holland? Then Mr. Malik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Of course, this location is situated in Ward 1, so I appreciate the opportunity to just close up some loose ends here. So Ms. Murphy and Mr. Gantz, I'm going to try and do this so as not to give myself whiplash, but also be able to politely give you my, my eye contact. I think we can all agree that we've been in this room many, many times on this issue over the past, gosh, going back to October of last year, and have heard a great deal of detail about what efforts have gone in. And although I'm hesitant to open that up, I think you would agree that it does bear on two of the factors of the four that are relevant to a consideration of whether or not your appeal is successful. So specifically, and I know that many of the folks who are here today in the gallery were here for this as well, if you would please, I'd like some clarity around the idea that there was no national or particularly emphatic regional effort to market this property because of the concern about potentially tying up the property with deposits that were not necessarily being made in good faith, concern about
that's not right. That's
Okay.
not right.
Okay, well,
What is
set me
what
straight.
is correct was that we didn't advertise through that one website and with that one real estate development. We have brought in our own national developers from Philadelphia, Cincinnati, Chicago, where are the other ones? You know, New York, we had one from New York, plus everybody we could hit in Northeast Ohio. California.
And
So
do
we
you-
have gone across the country looking.
Okay, so that must have happened since the February meeting, is that right?
No, it's been going on. We started over a year ago with Mr. Moran trying to find partners, and before that, we had been doing it, Justin in particular had done several, and then in the last, I guess it's close to 270 days now, we have been digging really hard with trying to put groups together that include some of what I mentioned, and some local people.
Okay.
So we're just really trying really hard.
I see. Now, would you agree with me that in the last couple of hearings in this room, that there has been some pretty animated discussion about the relative absence of opportunity, even for organizations like our Summit County Historical Society, to access the property, to get in and look around? I was here, and you were too. Would you agree
Yeah.
that there was a lot of discussion around this?
We actually did a tour for PTP, and we set up a tour with the Historical Society, which Leanne had to cancel, and we're still going to do it. And any developer who wanted to go through was escorted through.
Okay. Do you represent Mr. Moran in his other properties, including the, I think it was an Art Deco era bus station up in Cleveland?
No, that was in Birmingham. No,
Yeah.
we do not, we're not architects of record. We're not architects of record on his other historic projects, but he did do the historic adaptive reuse of the Federal Trust Building in Birmingham, Alabama, and a former Greyhound bus station in Birmingham as well.
That's also in Birmingham?
Yes.
Okay. I asked this question because he seems to enjoy a certain amount of prominence in repurposing historically significant buildings. Agreed?
Yeah.
Okay. And there seems to have been an effort to reach well beyond Birmingham. In fact, I was actually thinking this was going on in Cleveland, because I believe I read a story about this in Crane's Cleveland Business publication. My point here is I'm trying to understand and invite you to share with this group here exactly what the effort's been. And I think this also ties to the suggestion that it would take another 3 years to get a project off the ground, when in reality, I think those of us who are familiar with the process know that the time frame for obtaining state and federal tax credits has, one sort of life of its own, while development is something else. So I think it's not entirely accurate to suggest that it's going to take another 3 years.
Well,
for the next
it will take
developer.
another 3 years if we have to reapply for the tax credits.
I would
That's the
respectfully
issue.
disagree. But
Well, I've done like over 40 tax credit projects.
You got me
and-
beat.
And
Thank you.
I really think that the issue here is being able to meet the capital requirements. And not the tax credits itself, but the issue that we're having right now in trying to put this team together is that the Department of Development wants to see things done like this, and the developers we're talking to say, maybe 6 months we can get that loan from the bank if we can prove we're going to keep the tax credits. So they go back and forth, head to head, and the deal making is so slow.
Hence the negotiation.
It's painfully slow.
Yeah.
Sure, but in any event, there's no such thing as an historically significant parking lot, is there?
Actually, yes, there's one in Des Moines. So you didn't want
Very
that
good.
answer, did you?
Thank you. Mr.
We're not
Malik has a
Des Moines.
question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to everyone who's spoken today. Bear with me because I am going to go back, I think, and tread just a little bit of the ground that has been covered, but I'll try to be brief. Part of this is, the legal requirements of the ordinance that allows the approval of this demolition certificate. So as we've talked about, there are 4 criteria. I'm going to paraphrase, but the historic landmark is so deteriorated that it's irretrievably lost, that the structure is a secondary one that lacks historic architectural significance or does not occupy a major portion, that retention is not technically or economically feasible, and that there's no feasible alternative to demolition, right? So of those 4, which is the owner claiming are met? All 4?
No, I'm sorry, the 4th one, the economic viability.
Okay, so the owner is not claiming that any of the 3, any of A, B, or C are met?
That's correct.
Okay. And I think part of the concern that I have in this is, I think, referred to by the chair, that the owner was the owner when the historic designation was submitted. That's correct. And now the same owner is requesting that that demolition be approved despite having themselves put forward the historic designation.
At the time that the designation was requested, he had a tenant for the building. And that's where the economic development hardship comes in, because that tenant went away. And he's had a terrible time trying to find another tenant to make the project viable.
And I, want to be clear, I'm not at all unsympathetic to that, right? All cities across America are facing very hard decisions around a lot of buildings that, have all kinds of requirements and factors and externalities that are beyond our control as individuals. I guess the point that I would be making is that at the time the request for the historic designation was made, that comes with it a certain amount of responsibilities or conditions upon the property, one of which is the factors and requirements under which that can then be demolished, which would have been entered into knowingly, right? That those would have to be met. If you are going to avail yourself of tax credits, then you are also going to have the requirements that are then placed upon that.
In the way that your ordinance is written is once that designation is met, the building can never come down. Do you understand that?
Well, so that wasn't what I was asking, right? I was just asking that the requirements, once you are applying for historic designation, that comes with certain requirements. So I'm glad you brought that up, though, because, and I don't, I'm not trying to be confrontational. We also had this discussion, which I can admit I think can be confusing to everyone, it's confusing to me, about how much of the building is being sought to be demolished, right? So I guess one comment that I would make, and I would be interested in hearing your perspective, if the proposal was for the demolition of only a portion, for instance, the most recent portion of the building to be demolished, right? That structure could be referred to as a secondary one that lacks historical or architectural significance and does not occupy a major portion of the site. Is that an argument that could be made?
Again, I think we're kind of struggling to understand the subjectivity of this and how multiple iterations can be proposed and reviewed. And just speaking on behalf of the owner, I think what he's saying is I have a purchase agreement in hand for $2 million to put this as surface parking and maintain the clock tower. That's what we've been given, and that's what we're here to show. I mean, our hope is we would love to have more time on this. There are things moving that we can't discuss. We would love to talk about different options, but I think that's where we're kind of struggling, is understanding the review process and all these different options, how they're reviewed. There's no language in this as how it's reviewed. Again, it's the 4 pieces that you've read.
There is language.
We're kind of under review here for.
Okay, well, just a final comment if I can make it.
Sure.
Which is that, there are 4 conditions here. It's only one that the appellant is claiming is met. And I understand that there's concern or debate around another one of those elements, but that still would only be 2 elements. There's 2 other elements that I think are a concern here.
So if I may, these 4 criteria are used in many cities' requirements, but most of them say or. This requirement, or this requirement, or this requirement. Or exception, sorry, I used the wrong word. They should, exception. And if we go by what's done in most cities, then you would try to prove one of those, or one of them, or 2 of them to be stronger. But in this case, we have no choice but to meet all because they say and. And it's unusual to find a city with all 4 criteria met in order for any demolition. Also, if the owner is following his responsibility to take care of the building, then the building would not be deteriorated and it would never meet that. So that's a circular problem.
Okay, I appreciate you sharing.
That's what we're trying to understand. I mean, this essentially tells the owner, your building needs to lose its structural integrity and deterioration of the condition of it in order to do what you're asking for it. And that's, and again, I still don't understand how anyone would meet the first one after a designation has been met. Again, because these are connected by and not or.
Gotcha. Nancy Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it appropriate, is it permissible for me to ask Mr. Wheeler a question?
Sure.
So, Mr. Wheeler, you and I were in the preceding hearings on this matter.
Yep.
And just for the record, since, you know, we do have a developed record here, but most of the people watching, either here or at home or in the future, won't necessarily know this. Just for clarity, the request that was put forward was not for a partial demolition. It was for a complete demolition. Isn't that right?
There were multiple options presented.
Okay.
The last one in the last meeting was to have the clock tower remain on the corner.
Okay.
We did not feel that that met the letter of the law as it's written, and after Mr. Antonucci can correct me, but after talking to Mr. Antonucci and Mr. York, we felt that the ordinance applied to the entire building, and it was not pieces of the building. And so once it's a historical building, the entire building falls under that umbrella. We felt our hands were tied. It does say and after every one of those, so you have to meet all 4 criteria. I got a clarification on that. There is no going back on that. So.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you. And indeed, you know, this ordinance is written in the conjunctive, not the disjunctive. And just as I make no pretense as to having 40 rounds of historic tax credits under my belt, I would submit that the argument about whether or not our ordinance is okay or appropriate, that's a conversation for another day. The standard here is whether or not the proposal meets the conjunctive 4-part requirements of this ordinance. Mm-hmm. I would just like to add one other thing because I'm not sure if it's in the record or not. Mr. Yule, who spoke earlier, has assembled a petition of nearly 1,000 signatures, over 1,000 signatures, which, if not already submitted, I would invite him to submit to council for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Very good. I'll invite you back this evening. Everyone, this evening at 7 o'clock, we will have an additional public hearing. After that public hearing, the committee will make a recommendation to all of council as stated before. I think it's important, and we appreciate the owner's interest in this property. This is hard work. It really is, especially for legacy cities, in terms of many of these buildings that have been here for some time, and to repurpose and reuse. It's hard work, and it does take a lot of time. We've experienced that here in Akron. I think it was talked about the Bowery district and this and that. That took a long time. If you go back and watch it, that took a super long time. And so it's going to, these type of developments, this type of building is going to take a long time. And our constituents want things to happen quicker too. Not only do you, our constituents do, and so do we. And so, and we have stayed in the pocket. We have been patient in terms of buildings, and we've been the beneficiaries of a lot of buildings, and we've lost some buildings as well. But we do appreciate you and all of your efforts with regards to this and the owner. And we invite you back this evening, and again, we'll make a recommendation. Thank you. With that, the Planning Committee is adjourned. Thank you.
Our next committee of the day will be the Parks and Recreation Committee. Those committee members are Lombardo, Mosley, Malik, Neal, and Connor. If we could just give everyone a moment to get to their chairs. Thanks so much.
Okay.
We do have all committee members present, but Councilman Neal has not joined video yet. Councilman Neal, if you can hear me, are you able to start your video? Okay, we do have all committee members present now. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'd like to call the Parks and Rec Committee meeting to order. And first, I'd like the approval of minutes from our last meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Minutes approved. So today we have an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee, after publicly advertising for bids, to enter into a contract or contracts to resurface various courts for basketball, pickleball, and tennis, including those located at Kerr Park and Morgan Park, authorizing the expenditure of funds and declaring an emergency. So I see we have Mr. Ashley here to speak for the Parks and Rec.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. These courts will be performed under the 2023 court resurfacing capital budget line item, budgeted at $250,000. Kerr Park has 2 tennis courts. Morgan Park has 3 basketball courts. Any remaining funds will be used to enhance other courts throughout the city.
So I was trying to write that down quickly. You said, so this ordinance is just for these 2 parks, right?
Yeah, those will take up the majority of the funds. If there's any funds left, we would like to do some miscellaneous improvements, color coat, resealing, fencing, portable nets, etc.
Okay, so 2 tennis courts at Kerr Park and 3 basketball courts at Morgan Park.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Very good. And this was in the budget?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Is there any questions from our committee members?
Right here. You can go
Okay.
first.
I looked left, so I'm going to go with Mr. Malik first. Mr. Malik.
Okay, thank you. Jim, just really quick, on here you have the pickleball as well. Where are the pickleball courts going?
Under this, we're looking at Kerr Park at striping one of the tennis courts for pickleball.
Okay, all right, and this will be for this year?
It will be awarded this year. We hope to have it in the fall.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Mosley.
Thank you.
Councilman Malik.
Do we have an estimate of how much the improvements for Kerr and Morgan Park are going to cost?
Around 130,000.
Okay. Okay. Great. Well, thank you.
Okay, let's see. I don't see anything. Oh, I'm sorry, Brad. Councilman McKittrick, please. Councilman McKittrick.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just had a quick question. I know previously last year we voted on pickleball courts at Davenport Park. I was wondering if there was any update on that at all.
Yeah, those courts are underway now. This week, actually, they were going to try to finish those up, but with the weather, it's been pushed back a couple of days, but it should be within the next couple of weeks.
Thanks very much.
The weather was nice 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. It's just their luck.
Okay. I don't see any other committee members. Is there any other council members that have any questions today? I don't see that either. What's your pleasure?
Consent agenda is fine.
Consent agenda? Can I have a motion for consent?
I'll make a motion for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
It's even better. We have a motion for suspension of the rules, favorable report. We have a second?
Second.
Second, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. There you have it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Wait, Jim, before you leave, I have a quick question.
Oh.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Joy Park, have you guys, bids for the track? Do we have a bid yet for the track?
The track is going to be done in-house through Parks Maintenance. We do have the materials now. I think right now they're starting at Schneider Park, finishing that up, and then moving over to Joy. And the Joy Park basketball and pickleball courts there should be mid-July. That should be starting.
Yeah, the basketball is done. They have the glass backboards up already.
Yeah, they will be
Those are
resurfaced
up, and the
as well.
pergola's up. I was just wondering, the track, church asked me about it yesterday, so I wanted to make sure I brought that up. So thank you for all you've done over there. Appreciate it.
Very good. If there's no other items coming before us, this meeting is adjourned.
Our next committee of the day is the Rules Committee. Those committee members are Freeman, Fusco, Amobian, Connor, and Malik. If we could give everyone just a moment here to connect to video. Mr. Chairman, Councilman Fusco is not with us at the moment, but you do have a quorum if you would like to get started.
Okay, I'd like to call the Rules Committee meeting to order, please. If I could please go ahead and roll call.
Freeman.
Here.
Fusco. Amobian.
Here.
Connor. And Malik.
Here.
All committee members are present except for Councilman Fusco.
Thank you. And then if I could have a motion to accept the minutes from the last meeting, please.
So move.
Second.
All in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, very good. We have one new item coming before us today. This is a resolution expressing opposition to and urging Akron citizens to vote no on Ohio Issue 1, a ballot initiative which, if approved, would embed a minority rule in Ohio's Constitution by requiring a 60% supermajority to pass citizen-led constitutional amendments and declaring an emergency. And do we have either of the sponsors with us? I see Ms. Somerville. Would you like to speak, please?
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. This resolution is just in opposition to Issue 1, which would basically destroy citizen-driven ballots and initiatives as we know them. Issue 1 is truly an attack on residents' constitutional rights, basically to be able to make decisions that impact their lives. At a time like today, we should be protecting residents' freedoms and giving them the ability to decide what their future looks like, instead of permanently changing the Constitution to give away residents' rights. So I'm just asking Council to support this resolution this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mobley?
I certainly agree with everything Madam President has stated. I have heard Representative Golonsky talk about this issue in several meetings, and we are at a critical juncture when you are forcing citizens to deliver 60% of the votes. But not only that, to have a specialized election where you know that the turnout is usually very low. And if they put this on the ballot, I guess it will be on the ballot in August, that we really need to really encourage people to vote, because that is why it is being placed at a time like this. It's bad timing, and you have very few people making this decision unless we do a lot of real hard pushing to get folks out to vote, because this doesn't make any sense. It's already difficult enough to get the petitions and the signatures you need to put it on the ballot, and then to make the increase to get it passed higher. It doesn't make any sense. We should be listening to the people, and people should give us the direction they want us to go. But particularly when you talk about a constitutional amendment, so I fully support this, and would like my name added, and maybe tonight we'll do council as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mobley. Are there any other comments? Sarah, if you could help me. I do not see anyone, but
Yes, there are some hands raised here in chambers. I apologize, I didn't see who was first, but Councilman Malik.
okay. Councilman Malik, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to thank the sponsors for bringing this in, and there's a couple ways in which this proposed change to our Constitution is cynical. First of all, it was only placed on the ballot in a rushed August election after a proposal was put to protect abortion rights on our November ballot. And so it's pretty clearly an attack on that to create new rules of the road for a specific protection that folks in the State House are trying to undermine, which is access to reproductive rights for women. The second reason it's very cynical is because many of the folks who put this forward have spent the last several years trying to eliminate August elections. But as soon as there's potential policy gain that they see for an August election, there's a proposal. I think that voters are smarter than this. I think voters will reject this, but I hope we can use our voices very clearly to make sure that people get out and vote.
Thank you, Mr. Malik. Any other hands?
Yes, I saw Councilwoman Mosley, and I also saw Councilwoman Holland.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Mosley?
Thank you, Chairman Freeman. Just briefly, I appreciate the resolution coming in from Councilwoman Somerville and Councilman Fusco. I do hope that we put some teeth behind this resolution. If we are able to bring this in this evening as council as a whole, I hope that we do more than just a resolution. I hope that we look at our budget and see if we have money for us as a council body as a whole to do a mailer into our households of our voters, because again, this is an August off election and turnout will be low unless we really push the issue. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilwoman Holland?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to echo the sentiments expressed by my colleague, Councilman Malik. Cynical indeed. This is a move that is meant to undo one of the most fundamental concepts of democracy, which is one person, one vote.
Right.
The idea that we would be constrained from amending our Constitution on any issue, very much including the right of women to enjoy body autonomy and to exercise their private right to make decisions about their health care and their futures, that we would constrain any effort by voters to amend and update our Constitution in ways that make sense to protect individual liberties, including on issues like voting itself, that we would say that we're going to upend the idea of one person, one vote is startling, and it is deeply, deeply cynical. It should go without saying, but I think that it's always a surprise to consider too, that elections are expensive. That this is not only a cynical move, but a costly one. And that the timing of this is no accident. It is very much calculated, and our very own Ohio Secretary of State, on the record, publicly conceded just in the last several days that this is all about blocking an effort to restore rights that were taken away from people who own uteruses last June 24th, in the now notorious Dobbs decision. So I too hope that we can maybe bring this as council as a whole. I am so grateful for the sponsors for bringing this forward, and I would ask that my name be added. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to offer comments?
If there aren't any other comments, I'd make a motion for a suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
We have a motion for suspension of the rules. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. We will see that this comes before us this evening, and with that, I believe we have concluded our business.
Our next,
and we are adjourned 2:21. Thank you.
Our next committee of the day is the Public Service Committee. Those committee members are Mosley, Kamer, Holland, Lombardo, and McKittrick. Looks like we do have all committee members present whenever you're ready, Madam Chair. And just want to make a note for the record, in case you did not see it, item number 5 has been pulled.
Has been pulled?
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Pulled. Okay, if I could call the Public Service Committee to order, if I could get a motion approval of the previous meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Our first piece is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter into a contract or contracts after publicly advertising for bids for the construction, demolition of the Summit Lake Pump House and declaring an emergency. Mr. Ludlow?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of committee. Yes, on the north shore of Summit Lake, where we're going to be doing the new project with the Ohio and Erie Canal, there's 2 old pump houses that were used. I believe one was for BFG years ago, and the other one was something on Verdun Odom Boulevard. It was part of some type of a water feature project. Neither one of these have been in service for about 30 years. As you remember, a few months ago, we brought a piece of legislation to remove the electric because that electric service was feeding the Summit Lake, which we've recently bid that project. So the electric will be removed, and we'd like to demo these 2 pump houses or give us the authorization to bid the demo of these as part of that North Shore project.
Okay. Any questions from committee members? Any questions from council members? Seeing none, what's your pleasure, Mr. Ludlow?
Can we suspend the rules to the timing of this project, please?
Can I get a motion for suspension of the rules?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, our next piece is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service or his designee to enter into a contract or contracts with Burgess and Nipple. Or is it Nipple?
Nipple.
Nipple. I said Nipple. Lord Jesus, help me. For the design of the polymer system improvements at the renewable energy facility and declaring an emergency. Mr. Ludlow?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of committee. This legislation is to authorize BNN to design, and there'll be some funds in here for construction services, reviewing RFIs during the construction phase. Also, we have already hired them to do some of the preliminary drawings for this project. What this project is, over at the renewable energy facility across the river from our wastewater plant, we send about 80 million gallons of sludge from the wastewater plant across the river. It goes across the river at about a 5% consistency and 95% is liquid. What they do over there, they add, what this system will do is add the polymer to that sludge, and they thicken it, and then what it happens then is they take that sludge, and by mixing it with another polymer, it gases off. They take that gas and they burn that gas to generate electricity. So it generates enough electricity to run that system across the river, and it also generates about 40% of electricity we needed at WRF. So that probably is electrical savings of about $80,000 a month. Well, this system is well over 30 years. There's 4 tanks. They're a flat bottom tank, so we're building a whole new facility for this polymer. I can keep going, but basically it's just replacing the polymer system over there.
Okay. On here it says that there has been a previous 20-year agreement, so there.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Any questions from committee members? Any questions from council members? Seeing none, can I get a motion for suspension of the rules?
Motion to suspend with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. We have nothing else coming before us. We are adjourned.
Our next committee of the day is the Public Safety Committee. Those committee members are Kamer, Mosley, Lombardo, Malik, and McKittrick. If we can give everyone a moment here to change seats, we'll get started in just a moment.
It's not that bad. I'm comfortable. Jim?
As soon as I said, I was like, I don't think it was me. Happy Monday.
It's all good.
Hey, Craig.
Okay, we're ready here in chambers whenever you are, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, I'd like to call the public safety meeting to order, please. All members are present. Can I get approval of the minutes from last week's meeting, please?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? All right, thanks. We have 2 new pieces in front of us. And Sarah, can you read the first one in while I find these real quick?
Sure. Item number 7 is an ordinance authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into a contract with Oriana House Incorporated for confinement rehabilitation services and alternative sentencing options for certain offenders convicted of violations of the Akron Municipal Code of Ordinances and declaring an emergency.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that. I do see several guests with us, but I'll start with the Deputy Mayor of Public Safety, Tucker.
Good afternoon, and thank you. This first piece of legislation, I think our prosecutor, Craig Morgan, is here to discuss it further.
Thank you, sir. Members of council, this is just the yearly agreement that we have with our ongoing relationship with Oriana House. Of course, for a very long time now, Oriana House has provided the Akron Municipal Court the ability to utilize alternative sentencing measures as opposed to carceral sentencing. Oriana, of course, focuses those alternative sentencing measures on behavioral health, alcohol, drug, mental health treatment. They provide different graduated levels depending on the circumstances. Anything from a weekly day reporting for alcohol or drug testing, home incarceration, work release programs, residential mental health treatment, and it also includes the CAS facility, formerly the Glenwood Jail, for individuals, as well as the DUI programs for offenders who are charged with OVI and have to do a certain mandatory minimum time related to that. If you have any questions or if there's anything else from Chief of Staff Ms. Wilms, I also have with me my Deputy Chief Prosecutor, Elena Sad, and apparently we all decided to coordinate with Navy Blue today. So if there's any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.
All right, thank you for that presentation. I appreciate that. Committee members, any questions or comments? I do see Councilwoman Mosley, please.
Thank you, Chairman Kamer. Craig, I have a question on the, I'm looking at the breakdown on here. I don't want to get too in the weeds on it. I'll give you a call. Where it talks about the intermediate GPS, is that for people after bonds are set, or is that for like violent?
This would actually be for excellent question, not necessarily the pretrial release, but more people after conviction. So in instances of domestic violence, if we were to want to put someone convicted of domestic violence on GPS, so that for a period of time, let's say 90, 120, 150 days, the offender would be prohibited going near certain targeted areas.
Right.
So this would be post-conviction type of GPS.
Okay. I don't see house arrest on here, though. I'm looking. I see the one for Scram, but I don't see one for...
It's up there under...
They put it under home incarceration.
Yeah, HI.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Mallett?
Thank you very much. Mr. Morgan, there was a letter that was attached to the legislation summarizing kind of how we got here. And I know there's some discussion about, the county did an RFP process and we kind of modeled this off of that. Can you kind of discuss that in a little bit more detail and kind of how we arrived here at this point?
This is more of a, less the county, but more the, how do I want to say, more a reflection of our yearly, the yearly agreements that we have. So for instance, I think the budgeted amount is 2.7. I think we actually came in under that last year by a couple $100,000. So it's modeled after each year's usage.
Okay. There is one sentence in here that caught my eye. It said, the City of Akron contract does differ slightly, as the city for many years agreed to cover the cost of certain positions. These positions benefit the City of Akron, but there is some overlap with other services. Could you go into more detail about that?
I could. Some of the positions that they provide are liaisons through the various court programs. So for instance, they provide the positions for like the Family Intervention Court Coordinator, and also some of the mental health court, the people that work for there. So it's mostly those positions are related to liaisons that work between specialty courts and the programs.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions or comments? I don't see any. What's your pleasure on this one?
Consent's fine.
Okay.
Motion for consent. Motion for consent.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor for consent agenda? Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, we'll place that on the consent agenda. Thanks for coming down. I appreciate that. Our next piece, I do have it in front of us. Ordinance authorizing the purchasing agent to enter into a contract or contracts without the formality of publicly advertising for bids with W.W. Williams Company, LLC, for the repair and replacement of the engine in the Akron Fire Division frontline ladder truck and declared emergency. And I'll turn it back over to Deputy Mayor Tucker.
Again, good afternoon. This is to repair, like you said, the engine for Ladder 9, which is about a $700,000 or $800,000 vehicle. And for more specific information on this, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Shoemaker.
Good afternoon, thank you. The purpose of this legislation is allow the purchase to
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Can you pull that microphone a little close so that those online can hear more clearly? Thank you.
Purpose of this legislation is to allow the purchasing to enter into agreement with W.W. Williams for the repair, the replacement of the engine in one of Akron's frontline ladder trucks, specifically Ladder 9, which was built in 2007.
All right, thank you. Questions or comments from committee members? I see Councilman Mallett's hand is up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. Two things. First of all, $65,000, it doesn't sound like a huge expense when compared to the overall cost of replacing some of these vehicles. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then two, what's the time frame on making the repair?
As long as there's no major problems, 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, great. Well, it sounds like a a pretty straightforward thing to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other questions or comments? All right, I don't see any.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if you can see Councilwoman Amobian has her hand raised.
Oh, sure, Councilwoman, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious, I see that this was a no public bid contract. Can you explain that? Have you done work with this company before?
It is a reputable company that we have, a trusted vendor that we have, the City of Akron Fire has used over the years. This would save the process of bidding by approximately 3 or 4 weeks, if that answers your question.
And we've used this company for years, you said?
Correct.
Are there other companies that will provide the same service out there that we've used before?
I would like to refer to Robert Carillon. He's our maintenance supervisor. I brought him today also. I think he can answer a little bit better than I can, if that's all right.
All right, I'll see if I can answer that. Yes, there are other vendors out there. I did check with R&R Engine out on South Arlington Street. Unfortunately, right now, they do not have the manpower to take on this project. W.W. Williams has done quite a bit of stuff for us over the years. They specialize in this type of specialty equipment. Unfortunately, this equipment can't go just to any shop, and we have a really good rapport with W.W. Williams and have confidence in them.
So am I to assume that if someone else had the manpower to do this, you would have considered another contractor as well?
So yes, we're very limited in that. Unfortunately, the truck was not running correctly. So it's unfortunately, we can't take it around to 3 or 4 different vendors to have them look at it. And then to properly diagnose it, they did have to disassemble the engine to get internally in it to see what the exact issue was. And once you disassemble it, now we'll have to tow it around to different places to have somebody else give their opinion on it, which adds cost and time.
Sure. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Anything else?
Mr. Chair, I can see that Gert Wilms has her hand raised, and Councilman Malik also has.
Chief of Staff, go.
Thank you, Chair. Sir, at this point, is this truck is out of service until it is fixed?
That is correct.
Is there currently a replacement truck to do the work while this one's out?
So they are there. Station 9 or Ladder 9 is currently in a 32-year-old truck until this one's fixed.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you, appreciate that. Anything else?
Yes, Councilman Malik also had his hand raised.
Yeah, the Chief of Staff asked the exact question I was going to ask, and I think, the fact that this unit is out of service and we have, a need to get this back in service as quickly as possible does speak to, why there's not competitive bidding in this instance.
Thank you, appreciate that. All right, well, we'll move forward. I think we're in a hurry to get this fixed and back in service, correct?
That is correct.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion for suspension of the rules with a favorable report.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, I have a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thanks. We'll pass that this evening.
Thank you.
We are adjourned.
Get control of your...
Our next committee of the day will be the Public Utilities and Green Committee, and it will begin at 2:45. Those committee members are Freeman, McKittrick, Connor, Mosley, and Holland. And again, that's the Public Utilities and Green Committee, and it will begin at 2:45. Thank you.